Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather Part 3 from 1990. So yes, finally here. It's been a few months, of course, since I reviewed the first two Godfather films, and there they are behind me, of course. These films, as I've said in them reviews, both of them are in my top 15 of all time. The second one for me is the greatest Coppola film, and a very strong contender for one of the 10 best films ever made, in my opinion. Personally, I just think that is the finest of Coppola's work. As I say, pretty much ever, almost anyway. And yes, this film, I haven't got the Blu-ray to show, as you will notice, but that's because I thought I didn't want to buy this film. It's kind of expensive, and I thought the only other time I've seen this film was many years ago. It obviously is now more than 10 years since I saw this film. It was the only watch I ever, kind of gave this one. I never rewatched this film at all, which is quite shocking because the other two, of course, I jump at the chance pretty much every year. I've, without fail, rewatched these films. I love them so much. But the third one is one that I never, ever wanted to go back to, other than just to kind of see, recently kind of just see, is this film actually, kind of, what do I think of this film? I watched this kind of originally just after, the second one, which was shortly after the first when I watched them for the first time. And of course, I was blown away by the first two. And this one, I'll be honest, I didn't like. I didn't hate it. I didn't flat out hate it. It was more of a, I just didn't enjoy it. I didn't, I kind of instantly forgot this film. And it's very divisive, of course. IMDB, it's actually pretty strong, 7.6. I guess most people understand that's actually quite high, considering so many films are getting lower on that. The rating seems very strange on that, but 7.6 is pretty strong. But a lot of people do hate this film. It's kind of very famous. It's a famous film just like the other two, but this time for the different reasons of, a lot of people hate this film, and many consider it a disappointment, a disaster, of course. There would be people that praise this film, actually, Roger Ebert being one, and, just saying it's actually a compelling, film, a conclusion, if you will. This film, of course, and it's not going to be a spoilers review, so rest assured there, I'm not going to, yes, it's not going to be an hour-long review like I did for the second one, and the first one as well, pretty much, but yes, it is an epilogue. This one really is considered by Coppola as an epilogue, and most people consider it one of the worst Coppola films, and they do, I think, quite unfairly criticise Sofia Coppola. Perhaps I'll get into that, but yeah, it's very famous for all these reasons. But Coppola, of course, is pretty much this began because of the money, I guess, and it wasn't a film he really wanted to do, I don't feel, and it's been on record. I'm just saying that, because it is actually kind of, that is what is the case, really. But he considers it an epilogue, and of course, after rewatching this, finally, I think, yeah, it is an epilogue. There's no other way to look about it, kind of thing. You can't view it from different ways, and it just would not make sense if it wasn't an epilogue, really. It just doesn't, this is completely different, and it is kind of, in that sense, you could call it an afterthought, kind of thing, kind of a little bit extra, kind of bonus thing, if you will. But I just consider it a little bit of a kind of slightly different universe, kind of away from them. Looking back, of course, to the first two, but its own thing, I feel. And yes, I think it is divisive. Some people actually, I've seen some people say that they do count it, at least among their favourites, but just not. No one really says, that this is, the best of the three. That's basically what it is. It's divisive. Some hate it, some love it, but no one really considers it the best, in the trilogy. And yes, this was quite a surprise, actually. Of course, yes, I was about 12 or so, or 11 perhaps, actually. I must have been 11 when I actually watched this for the first time, and I just, as I say, I instantly forgot this film, and yes, when I rewatched it, I didn't really remember anything too much coming back to me. It was one of those, I literally, even though I've watched it again, I can't actually look at a lot of the film and say, oh, I remember that, it's very strange, but yes, I didn't like it. As I say, I didn't hate it, but I didn't care for it. But now, I think actually giving it a proper watch, this is actually very good. A very good film, in my opinion. It's actually not that bad at all. But and we'll just say it now, and it doesn't have to be compared. And I think it's great as an epilogue actually, because it is a lot more. It's definitely very separate. Although it does look back and it does actually show clips, which from the first two, which some people could justifiably can be really annoyed at. Of course, I'm kind of because it's completely separate. By that point, and I know this completely different tone and everything. I'm not kind of angered at all by seeing. Those legendary films, used in a kind of lesser film, perhaps. But yes, I think that's very interesting. But it basically, yes, I think, in its own right, I think it's very good compared to the first two. It is obviously, it's nothing compared to them. I count them as the, literally some of the very, very, very best. The second one. Part two is very close to that top spot for me, just of all time. As a piece of cinema, this film, of course, I don't consider it anything close. It's not even a great film, but I think there's so much, of course, that you can kind of justifiably, kind of be disappointed with, and after viewing it, of course, I didn't really think throughout, compare it, of course, but after watching it, of course, this is nothing to to compare. It's lesser in every way, just. There is not, to sum it up, there's not the richness, the subtleties with the, combined with the majestic, grand scope of it, the investing narrative, the use of music even is nowhere, close. The acting, the character arcs, and just how mind blown it is. This film is not mind blown in my opinion at all. It's completely different, and I think it does show that it's nowhere near as ambitious, which is, you can't really say too many films are as ambitious as, part two perhaps, but, it's nowhere near as ambitious, I feel. There isn't, I clearly don't feel the passion that Coppola has, that he did have, for the first two, clearly, and I think you can probably agree with that, but even though he didn't kind of perhaps put his whole, kind of potential into this, and kind of allow this film to compare to the first two, I think he does, naturally deliver some greatness in the film. I feel, he is such a great filmmaker that even though this is maybe not one of his best films, I think, the guy can't do too much wrong in that sense, because he's just so great. And I think it is a lesser film, obviously, in the trilogy, but it's a very good film. I feel, nearing into the good mark. It has got some things that bring it down, but I was actually kind of moved in places by this film. I was definitely compelled for a lot of the film, and I think there was just I think there was a heart to this film that Coppola just brings to his films, and that I felt, even though it's not comparable, I think it definitely had a heart. There's a warm feeling that I got from some of the scenes, definitely, especially when you get to Sicily. This is a lot of the film, when it really shines, and the final sequence, apart from some moments, of course, involving certain big moments, I'm not going to spoil that if you've not seen the film, but some moments there, are not great for me, but overall that sequence is actually very, very good. The use of music, the way he kind of contrasts this, opera, of course, with what's going on here, and the way he kind of brings it to a close. If you discount some of the acting there and stuff, and some of the out of tone moments, I think that is actually a very good sequence. And yes, the final montage, it's kind of, I guess that can really annoy some people, but I think in itself it's actually very nice to see, and it's kind of it is a good ending. I feel, not a great ending really for me, but yes, this film basically follows. It's many years after the second even, but of course Michael Corleone is basically a lot. He's elderly, of course, elderly man here, and basically, yes, he doesn't want his family to kind of for it to be illegitimate anymore, and of course he's done things between the Godfather Part 2 and this one to kind of make sure that happens, but of course he wants to fully finalise this, but of course you've got a character played by Eli Wallach, and he is basically one of such characters who kind of stops this from happening, or at least gets in the way, and things happen throughout the film, people die, of course, and yes, it's this struggle, of course, to kind of balance this out, and of course he's also got this kind of this thread going on, of course, between his daughter Mary, played by Sofia Coppola. We'll get to that in a minute. But yes, Andy Garcia plays Vincent, and he is basically the son of Sonny, of course, and yes, basically he isn't considered maybe a true member of the family for obvious reasons, because of what happened and stuff and how he was born. But he's one that basically has a big role in the film, and yes, I think the kind of there is a romance, of course, between him and Mary. This character Vincent and Mary, played by Sofia Coppola, and that is something that Michael doesn't take to. He doesn't want this to happen. He wants Vincent to kind of stay away from this, and of course because they are cousins, and yes, he doesn't take too well to this. It's kind of that balancing out with this whole thing with the Vatican, which this is kind of portrayed, kind of real life events, John Paul I, and this whole thing with the Vatican, it's kind of explored in the film, and there's a big kind of the main plot that isn't involving the family, the Corleone family, is involving this. You've got quite a lot of scenes involving the Vatican, and yes, that's something that does bring the film down. I feel it's definitely, it just isn't that compelling really. This whole stuff, and it's quite a lot of this, in the first half mainly. It doesn't maybe take. It's not as much of a role in the second half of the film, but yes, that's definitely something that is kind of flat at times, I feel, which is very strange. This would be something that could be obviously stunning under the hands of this filmmaker, but yes, as we know, the whole project is not the same. It's not this kind of, the whole purpose of it is not there, but I think even though he doesn't bring a massively compelling, for me anyway, kind of plot going on here, involving this. I think the actual stuff with the family when it's personal, and also the action scenes actually as well, very, very compelling, very thrilling, I feel, if a little kind of overdone at times, but yes, I think, this stuff with the family when it's personal, when it's this, perhaps this relationship between Mary and Vincent, or just with Michael and of course Connie and Kay, and his son Anthony. This is stuff that I do really, really like. Actually, mostly there's moments in this that I was just really compelled by. Especially this relationship between Mary and Vincent. It's very, very complex, but just I think really, really well done, actually. And yes, just adds a lot of tension, a lot of drama to the film, and complexities, and how Michael reacts to this. It just makes for really, really good drama, I feel. And yes, we'll talk about the cinematography, the editing, this kind of stuff. Again, it doesn't compare. I'm not kind of in awe of this film personally. Just like I am with the first and the second. It's nothing that I kind of go, wow, that's one of the best shots of all time. And the next scene, perhaps, I kind of go, oh, another one of the best shots of all time, and so on. It's not like this, and I'm not kind of in a trance with the editing or anything like that, and the use of music. But it is very, very good at times. As I say, it doesn't compare, but I think the framing is just very impressive. The scenes in Sicily, especially, the lighting there, and just the overall nostalgic feeling, just the overall mood of this through the visuals, I think is actually very much to praise. And the editing, a bit disappointing, but kind of because there's not too much in the way of editing, like there is perhaps in the second one or in the first. But I think it is kind of basic at times, the editing, but it's strong. It's definitely fine. The cinematography is very good. The editing is kind of solid. The use of music is definitely very good as well. Especially the Cavalleria Rusticana, of course. The use of that in the end of the film, and that kind of montage sequence. That of course we know. Well, I guess a lot of people would know that Coppola, one of his favourite films is Raging Bull, and of course that is famously the theme song, for that film, and I guess that's probably why he used that, because he has such a strong kind of connection to the music, I guess. It's just, it's used of course in the end of the film, and I really enjoyed that. I think the ending montage it's definitely well done. You know, and it comes to a conclusion that, you know, over the course of this film, I'm definitely moved. I can't deny that. I'm definitely emotionally attached, you know, to certain things, and I'm definitely, you know, enthralled by some pieces. You know, certainly the main characters here, when it is, you know, personal within this family, of course, and everything there. I think, you know, I do definitely really enjoy this film. There's a couple of moments that I really, you could say, almost I loved, and you know, it's just let down mainly by the kind of the stuff, you know, with the Vatican. It's just not that compelling really for me, and there is a lot of moments as well. You know, quickly say. There's a lot of funny moments in this film. You know, it kind of adds for a kind of campy charm, perhaps. But it's, you know, there's really weird moments. You know, perhaps where there's this very quiet scenes. You know, discussions perhaps, and you know, kind of meetings. You know, politics, if you will. But there's also moments within them where you kind of just hear characters shout. You know, very suddenly, and just weird outbursts in this film. You know, involving Andy Garcia, Al Pacino, of course, you know, and just many different people that just kind of shout, you know, randomly it seems, and it's kind of off-putting. It's hilarious, no denying that, but yeah, it is kind of weird as well and just bizarre. You know, I think it definitely breaks some sort of tone there that it's kind of established. But yes, I think speaking of Al Pacino, he gives a very good performance. I feel. I don't, you know, I think what they're doing with the character here, what Coppola's doing here. It's definitely nothing special. I don't think it's nothing for, you know, it's nothing that makes for kind of you know, stunning cinema here. But it's definitely, you know, it is very compelling. I think the kind of performance is very good. You know, it's, of course, there's certain moments in the film that's very famous that, you know, are a bit too far, I must say. You know, there's no denying that. They are very you know, kind of over the top. But in a way that kind of just isn't unnecessary, I feel. The kind of final scenes, you know, perhaps there, yeah, it's kind of a bit too far, of course. But, you know, overall, I think the kind of performance from Al Pacino is very good. You know, Kay, of course, is back in the film. I did like what they were doing with Kay at times, actually, and Diane Keaton, of course, is very good in the film. Talia Shire is very good in the film, but the character, while, you know, she does show warmth in the film, I think the character, there's weird things with her character where she's kind of, it's just out of character, I think, especially compared to the other two films. And I think because it is a continuation in some ways from them in terms of the characters and stuff, I think, you know, her character is just what they were doing with her. You know, I think it doesn't make sense to me why she would kind of have them views in the film without spoiling it. You know, just kind of, it's very strange. But, you know, I think Sofia Coppola, actually, I did really enjoy. Yes, no one really says that, of course, but I really enjoyed Sofia Coppola in the film. I think, aside from a couple of moments that just weren't, I just don't think the script and everything was there. Perhaps and it was just very strange scenes and everything. It was just kind of rushed. That's one of the things about the film. It is slightly rushed at times. Definitely feel that. But Sofia Coppola, other than that, you know, a couple of moments, I think her performance, you know, I think, you know, people have different opinions, but I do defend this performance. I think, you know, it's certainly one that I actually look at and think, why is she really criticised that much? I will defend this performance. You know, certainly I'm definitely in defence of it. I think it's actually mostly very good. I did really enjoy the character. I think very good character, a very good performance mostly, and yeah, I enjoyed her in the film. Actually, I think she was one of my favourite parts of the film, to be quite honest. I know a lot of people will kind of be shocked at that, but yes, I think definitely unfairly criticised for me. And Andy Garcia is very good in this film. He is, you know, I really like him as an actor, and you know, as his character Vincent, while the kind of arc and his transition to the, you know, the obvious title, you know, is kind of out of place at times, and you know, not enough development there. I think as a character, you know, on his own, and kind of his relationship with Mary and the interactions with him and Michael and perhaps Connie, I think is very good. And yes, you know, mostly just a very compelling, you know, entertaining character kind of arc here. And yes, what we have is a film that is very good. I feel it's definitely hindered by a lot of stuff, you know, involving different threads, different, you know, kind of things, and there's weird appearances from other characters in the previous films, I can't really get into, but without kind of actually spoiling the first perhaps as well. But I was very confused by a couple of things there. But yeah, I guess that's just kind of maybe because it was rushed a bit. But yes, this film, of course, gets a lot of hate, and I can't really deny that I feel it is rushed at times. There isn't enough in the film actually involving perhaps Michael and everything there to really become a great film. There's just not enough within this narrative that kind of keeps me fully compelled, and kind of this, there's not a transformation here that is kind of a great transformation or anything really, but you've got relationships, you've got moments, you've got overall elements of the film that I really like, and I think there's some greatness in there. No denying that. I think even kind of just proves, even when it's not maybe perhaps one of his best films, Coppola delivers an impressive film, and I just respond to the way he makes films, I guess. And I think this is of course, I'm not going to lie here, it's very disappointing if you compare it to the first two, which of course you can compare it to the first two. Why wouldn't you? I guess you could say, but I as it is an epilogue, and as I kind of know it's not as good. I do think, yes, I kind of just watched it as its own thing. Maybe kind of taking elements, of course, from the first and the second, and kind of extending them perhaps. It doesn't add anything to the films. I don't when I watch them films, I won't be thinking of this one perhaps, and I didn't really think of them when watching this. So that's kind of a good thing, I guess. On its own, I think a very good film. Not a great one, not a masterpiece, and not one of the best films ever made like the first two. But that's not the point. I think I have to praise this film. I think I really enjoyed it, and very surprised by this film. I didn't like it on my first watch when I was 11, of course. But yes, I do like this film now, and I certainly think it's a very good film, and I have to give it an 80%. This is a surprising film. I think it gets a lot of hate, and everyone can you justify that, of course. If you love the first two, I can't say that you even like this one. It's not comparable. It's not kind of in the same universe really. It doesn't feel like the Godfather films. I must say that it doesn't feel like it in its soul, in its kind of the spiritual levels that it reaches in anything really, in the way that the family is portrayed, in the subtleties, or in the majestic sweeping feel that the films have, or just in the kind of mind-blowing moments that they of course brought. They are just for me some of the very finest films, but this film as its own as its own piece, as its own thing, I think it's a very good film. I did enjoy it quite a bit actually, and I really like it. I think it's entertaining, not always entertaining, I must say. I think the performances, there's some really good performances here, some that aren't so great, but the main cast here I think actually give mostly good performances, and Diane Keaton, of course, Al Pacino, Talia Shire, although I didn't think the character there was very consistent, it didn't make too much sense to me, I think. But Andy Garcia, very good. Sofia Coppola, I really enjoyed actually, I must say. And yes, I think the use of music, very good. The overall filmmaking is very good, slash kind of solid, perhaps. But and there are some great moments. But yes, this is as I'll sum it up. It's not a Godfather film to me really at all. It's not part three. It's kind of just an epilogue. It's nothing comparable to these films, and it doesn't I am not convinced perhaps that this is a true Godfather film, in that sense, and that's not being disrespectful, it's just being honest. I don't feel it in its soul, in its kind of in anything really, that it is a Godfather film in that sense, but it is kind of following these characters, the same sort of actors of course appearing, and it's kind of just an extra kind of thing here, the Coppola brought together here. The ambition wasn't there, I don't feel, but I don't think that it's a kind of film that's bad at all. Definitely not by any stretch a bad film in my opinion, and it is actually very good for me. I did enjoy it, and yes, I think if you're kind of expecting it to be as good as the first two. You know, I think maybe you don't. You know, I'll be honest there, but yes, you know, kind of. I think it's, you know, it's a very just enjoyable, overall compelling, at times moving epilogue to the Godfather films, and yes, another very good film from Coppola, and not one of his best films, of course, but yeah, you know, I think I would definitely be watching this again, and it's not, as I say, it's not like the first two, but it is a very good film in my opinion, and yes, tell me your thoughts in the comments, and I personally think it is pretty underrated in many regards. I think especially Sofia Coppola gets a lot of unfair hate in this film. Actually, you know, I really enjoyed the character. I really was very compelled by this relationship between her and Andy Garcia's character Vincent. I think he was very good in the film, and I think it added a lot to the dynamics, of course. And yes, you know, it's very good for me. And yes, as always, tell me your thoughts, and thanks for watching my review.